welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We've been talking already for about 10 minutes on... we had to stop because we're actually getting some really good stuff on turf and all that sort of stuff. And the guest I have today is, you would have seen from the title, the Adelaide Oval curator, one of the most respected people in the cricket turf game, Damian Hough. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, Luke. Thanks for having me on.
I was very excited when you said yes to coming on because I'm a cricket nufty. I love sport. I love turf, but cricket is my favourite. And one of the things that for people who are not in this world, like, just there's a whole avenue. It's just a whole niche. There's a whole science behind creating a pitch and just everything that goes into it. And I think one of the most underrated aspects of what you do is that there's about a week every year where there's a patch of turf in Adelaide, which is the most scrutinised turf in the entire world. It's in Perth and Melbourne or whatever it is, but there's a lot of scrutiny, a lot of pressure, and you got to get it right. And you know what? 99% of the time, people like yourself and others doing the role, no one ever says a thing which is like, that's a great success. But when you get it wrong, they jump on your back. And anyways, there's a whole thing in there that I think what you're doing is, it's not just making nice turf like some people do. There's an art, there's a science. I want to talk about that for ages, and I'm super excited that you're coming on. So thanks for coming.
Fire away, mate. Yeah, you're right. It's the hardest part. It's the one part I probably still, I've been in charge for 13 years. I still haven't got used to the scrutiny, but it's part of the job. So you got to learn to cope with it. And when you get it right, there's not a better feeling. When you get it wrong, it's the worst feeling in the world. So hopefully we get it right more often than not. And we get on with it and they leave us alone.
I remember you saying in another podcast, we'll talk about this, that you did a podcast with the Water Pro guys. Yep. Great podcast. People, go listen. If you love this one, go listen to that one too. But you said in that podcast, and I found it fascinating, that there was a year that Mitchell Johnson was bowling out of his skin. Yeah. And you're the head curator at Adelaide, and you think he made a rubbish pitch, but he saved you, and you saved the attention. Tell us that story. What was it like?
So that was the first year of drop hits. So obviously, hell of a lot of pressure. Adelaide Oval moving away from, 150 years of tradition, moving to drop-ins. They've sold their soul. Are we going to get it right? How are we going to replicate? So our goal that year was to get consistent and even pace and bounce. What we've learnt over the time is, especially that pitch in particular, we got consistent bounce, but it was low, it was slow. And the feedback was we were tossing and turning what to do leading into the game. We had 2 or 3 Shield games. The last game was Tasmania. Here we were tossing up. It was very lopsided. At the end of the day, what do you want in a long format game? You want a good contest between bat. However that eventuates, that's what you want. We were tossing up whether we go down the path that we were going, trying to get a pitch to deteriorate naturally, like Adelaide Oval does on 4 or 5. But we were also thinking about leaving some grass on it, almost like what we do now. So, and at the end of the day, the feedback from the players at the time, and you do your post-match reviews with the match referee and the captains. And the captains at the time was probably Johan Botha for the Redbacks, and it was Tim Payne for Tassie. And the feedback at the time, there's a lot of people talking back to Australia who were playing test matches, probably at the Gabba, was saying, do what you're doing. This is a result pitch, longer format. So we went into that. It was the first time I felt any pressure really from outside noise. We'd had calls, whether it was the Sackett CEO talking to me or Cricket Australia ringing me, or first time ever, the coach rang me, Buff rang and had a chat. And I knew Buff because he's a South Australian. So he rang and just asked, and that was the first time I felt like there was a bit of pressure on
Right.
whether we're how to produce a pitch, but it definitely wasn't. We've never in any pitch test match pitch that I've had any pressure
Well,
about producing a pitch a certain way.
do you feel like people were nervous just because it was the first year, and so
Yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
so for those who
what do we get?
for those who aren't cricket nufties who don't know this, that there are certain stadiums that because they host AFL, they completely remove the cricket pitch, which is like a hard clay, not great for AFL at all.
Yeah,
they completely remove it. It's in metal trays.
Yep.
They take it out. I've seen videos. Actually, the MCG posted one of them putting theirs in last week, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so great, good chunk. I think check that on Instagram. But so these massive stadiums will bring in the entire cricket pitch and place it in the ground, basically.
Yeah.
And because of that process, it's different. It plays different. It responds differently. And you've got a challenge as a curator to make it work. And so all these people are nervous because this was the first year that Adelaide Oval had decided to host AFL. So you had to do it.
So we're 2 years, right, into this process where AFL hasn't started yet, but we've had 2 years to work through the tray design. What's it going to look like? What soil do we use? How do we get it as close to the original pitches as we possibly could? So we get to that, and I can go into that into more detail. We start preparing these pitches, and the first two, I think the 2 Shield games, might have been 3, they were reasonably flat, and I'm tossing and turning, and I'm not sure what to do. Talking to a good mate of mine, and who I think was probably nailing it more than anyone in the country in pitch preparation in Cameron Hodgkins, MCG curator. He was just dominating. Every pitch was just brilliant. And he was saying how he was leaving grass on his and the reasons why, and something to consider. We were going down a path of trying to produce pitches like the old square and the old pitches used to be, and we ended up going through after that feedback post match. We did that. In the end, it was Buff was saying, "What are we going to get? Coming to somewhere new, you just want to get a clear understanding as a high performance coach and the team of what are we going to get in South Australia." His comments to me when I said to him, "Mate, we're going down this path. We think we got to stick with this. We're trying to replicate what we had." He said, "That's all I need." So from that, we did it. All he said, I can remember the words, was, "The Poms are shitting themselves." Mitch Johnson is bowling with some real heat. They're shitting themselves. There'll be 20 wickets. Don't worry about that. And my comment was, well, these things turn flat without trying, so that'd be good. So we produced a pitch. In hindsight, looking back on it, yeah, it was flat. It was a flat pitch. But Mitch was bowling with such express pace. Like, it's one of the best bowling spells of a fast bowler you'd ever want to see.
Yeah.
And on a flattish pitch, and he'd be the first to say it, that, yeah, he just ripped through them. Commentators loved it. Everyone loved it. It felt like the old Adelaide Oval. So the commentator, Ian Chappells, and that came out and said, "This is what I felt it feels like when I grew up. Well done, you've done a great job." We didn't get a result for the rest of the year, but we got a result for the test match. Everyone left us alone. So I don't see Mitch much these days. He used to work on the ground staff when he was at the cricket academy. So when I was a young fella, I worked with him. So when I did see him, I said, "Mate, I owe you a lot, because you got everyone off our back through that spell of bowling." And everyone would remember it. He's big Mo, Merv Hughes sort of.
Oh, man.
He had them scared. So it was unbelievable. And it'll go down as a highlight, that first test match, him ripping through them in a spell of bowling that I've never seen at Adelaide Oval before.
Yeah. Do you know, just completely unrelated to Adelaide Oval or anything, but just Mitchell Johnson. The best thing I've ever seen in live sport was, I was 15. I was at the Wacker, and Australia were playing South Africa, and I think this is 2008, 2009, and Mitchell Johnson was, at the time, he was like the best thing since sliced bread or the worst thing. He just was really inconsistent. And I didn't have a mobile phone. I was with one of my good mates. He didn't have a mobile phone either. So our mums dropped us off at the stadium, and they were picking us up at the end of the match. And it was boring. It was the worst test match like cricket ever. It was just lame, lame, lame. Nothing was happening. And then with half an hour to go on the day, they got the new ball, and Mitchell Johnson took 6 wickets in half an hour.
Yeah.
And there was hardly anybody left at the stadium, and it was amazing. And me and my mate Joel were just going off. And we had, I don't know if you know, do you know what Dragon Ball Z is?
Yeah.
That cartoon.
Yeah.
We had a massive Mexican green and gold sombrero with Goku Super Saiyan hair on top of it. So he looked silly, and the cameras, because there was no one else in the stadium, kept going back on us going crazy because we had something silly on. And we're just 15-year-olds loving our life. And so we're like, we're on the TV, like, every time something big happens, they're panning to it was great. And I'm so glad I didn't have a mobile phone, because we probably would have left with everybody else. And it's just things like that so special to watch it live.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this because you know how umpires and people like that who are professionals in the game, they might have a bit of internal, they get excited or whatever like that, but they got to keep it professional, right? And I was thinking about that. Maybe out on the sidelines, do you get super excited when the Australians, but then like something happens, you got to run on the field and you got to suppress it all, or are you in professional mode when the game's on, or are you a real fan when it's all happening?
Yeah, I reckon I've gone vanilla. I reckon I'm very grey all the time. So, and the reason I say that is, it's such a roller coaster. I don't know another turf profession where there's so much heavy scrutiny all the time. Cricket pitch, everyone has an opinion. Everybody's opinion's different, from the batters to the bowlers to the coaches to the commentators to the fans at the stadium and every fan sitting at home watching it. Everyone has an opinion on that strip.
Yeah.
And when it's boring, they got to talk about something, so they talk about the pitch. So I found pretty quickly that I didn't want to have the big lows, so I become very measured and wouldn't get the big highs. So I'm very here. I don't want to be here, and I don't want to be here because I don't like being down here, and so I'm bloody boring now. So, but no, I do have some special moments, and I do have those real, like that spell of bowling, Nathan Lyon spinning Australia to victory in 2014 against India. The first ever day night, and those sort of things are the memories. At the time, you're heavily invested. You're over analysing, overthinking things, and you're just wanting a good contest between bat and ball. And you're wanting to, at the end of the day, I'm getting better at it, and I've learned, but you just want it to be, you want people to walk away and say, wow, that was a good pitch, that was a good contest. And sometimes, most times we get it right, but we don't always get it right. But at the end of the day, you just do your best, don't you? And then, and deep down that you and your team have got, done everything they possibly can. And Mother Nature plays a role, and everything else out there plays a role. And whether it's my team or MCG or Optus or the Wacker or wherever you want to go, where everybody is just doing their best, continue to strive for perfection.
What do you think is the best pitch that you've ever produced? Is there a specific game, and it might be it's probably not a T20 because they're too short, right? But is there a one-dayer or a test match or even a Shield game or something where you go, that I think that's the best thing I've ever done?
Yeah, 100%, and I can never get back there. So for a white ball one-dayer 2015 World Cup, we had a series of pitches there that just the pace, bounce, carry for Adelaide was, and the contest was just unbelievable. And that's our that's our benchmark every year with white ball cricket. We want to try and produce a pitch like that.
Yeah.
For Test match around the same period, the 2016 South Africa Test match. Again, perfect. Everything went well. Pace, bounce, carry, the balance between bat and ball, exciting contest, feedback. Again, we feel we've never gone back there, but we get close. But that's that drive to always get back to where that was. And there's a number of reasons for it. It's the age of the pitch. It's the organic matter in the pitch. It's the weather leading in. That just seemed to come together, and it's as close to perfection as what we feel we've ever had.
Because that's the thing about because you're dealing with something that's living, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to, it's living, and you got the conditions and the weather and everything. Because you talk about the organic matter, and one of the things is obviously as roots grow, some roots will break down and die, and the more that the pitch is aging, I'm just verbally processing this as I'm thinking, that would change the composition of the soil, right?
Yeah, and also remember, the art of producing a pitch is unlike anything that you taught at trade school. So the way you get taught how to maintain a healthy turf, what do we do in cricket? It's to simplify it. We want an even grass cover. We want an even water throughout a soil profile which is high in clay and silt, that has a very slow infiltration rate. We try to fill the soil profile up, that reservoir up, with moisture consistently at a deep depth. So for us, our trace at 200, we want moisture all the way through that, but we want consistency across the 75 square metres, so 3 metres by 25. We want it nice and consistent, moisture, deep, consistent moisture, even grass. And then we want to, I shouldn't swear, but to keep, we want to just build shit out of it.
You can swear.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we want to get solid compaction, deep compaction, and get heavy rolling on there, as heavy as we can, and as much moisture, so as wet as we can, without blackening up or pushing border. We don't believe in blackening up here in South Australia, so we don't, but we want to get it on. We want to get the heavy roller on when the ideal time is right, when the moisture is right, we can get the best compaction. So then you compact the profile, try and squeeze all the airspace out of the profile, which again is negative against everything you taught about.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we dry it out to an inch of its life, and we deliberately stress that leaf out so it changes colour, and that provides the surface that we want. And you've then got to get the timing right with what Mother Nature's chucking at you, and then you got to try and get it to naturally deteriorate and understand the soil you're using and the grass you're using and how the game's played. But trying to get it to naturally deteriorate over 4 or 5 days and hope for the best. And when one thing doesn't quite go right, like whether that's preparation or during the game, covering up, or it's really hot, it can affect the outcome or the way the pitch is played. So that's our philosophy is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And then it's just recovery afterwards. Let's get the turf back healthy again. So that's your philosophy, and it changes all the time. And part of that process of stressing the plant out is you're increasing that organic matter, because the leaf dies off and you're rolling it into the top of the clay. Adding grass clippings if you've got some bare spots. So you're actually adding organic matter through grass clippings to camouflage an area or to stop that clay from sticking to the roller, and keep it, an even moisture through it, so you don't have a bare area of grass on it. And you add to that organic matter. So there's so many factors that come into what you do during preparation, but then what you do from year to year to maintain minimal organic matter, good healthy roots, and a soil profile that is leaches slowly, infiltration is low, sodium levels are normally reasonably high, and you just got to understand what you're playing with and what you need to do.
Today's episode is brought to you by you. The reality is that this podcast, whilst it's clearly the best podcast in all of history, is not going to get the numbers of viewers that can sustain ad revenue and things like that from other platforms. So we need support from you guys. YouTube's not going to pay the bills. Patreon might. Patreon is a little thing that you can sign up for, or you can support us each month with small little payments. And I'm working on something, a little gift, a little way of saying thank you. That is an exclusive thing that you get for anyone who has signed up for the Patreon account. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But for all those people who have signed up and who do give a little bit of money to support the podcast, thank you very much. You are the people keeping the lights on in the podcast. Thank you. Let's get back into the episode. So what is more important? And I don't want you to sit on the fence, because you're probably going to sit on the fence because it's a bit of a dumb question. But what do you think is more important? Is it the quality of the soil or the clay or the mixture of it all that you start with on the pitch, or is it how you prepare it? So in other words, would you prefer to have, say, an average preparation interrupted or stuffed up or something like that, but you've got a fantastic quality soil? Or do you think that you could overcome even an average pitch if you had everything go right in your preparation?
So I reckon your quality of soil is so important, so that your soil will dictate how the pitch will play more than anything, I reckon.
Right.
In regards to the higher the clay, the more pace and bounce you'll get. They'll have challenges that we probably don't have, so they'll crack a lot more. They need to keep an eye on those, on their management techniques. The lower the clay, we've got our own challenges to try and have a contest between bat and ball to get that as much pace and bounce out of the pitch, and try and we'll use things. Our soil allows it to get some good turn, so we use that as one of our strengths.
Right.
But your preparation and understanding of how to prepare a pitch is also important. So I think if you had really good pitch and no idea how to make the pitch, or you struggled in your pitch preparation, or you had a really good curator who knew how to prepare a pitch on poor soil, I think the curator probably outshines the clay in my view. I reckon a poor quality curator on really good soil will still get shown out, and is still versus a poor quality soil. I reckon a good curator can still make something of it.
Right. So then because you really then, I mean, as with everything like in life, you need that. You want both. You want the amazing soil and the amazing curator, right? Is there a science to this where you go, say you've got a bare tray that's ready to have a brand new pitch in there, and you're going, I want 63.5% of this is this type of clay, and 12% is this kind of silt, and then I chuck in a bit of this and a bit of that, and you blend it all together, and you've worked that out to a science. And there's this, is there this agreed upon sort of ratios in the industry, or is it all like feel and instinct and, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Science is really important, but the art of curating is a gut feel, and is a dark art that's handed down from curator to curator. I'm 49, so I'm probably a little bit old school, but I've learned from a legend in the curating game, in Les Burnett, and it was definitely an Adelaide Oval way of preparing pitches that has stood the time over many decades. I I continue with those preparation techniques, but I use technology to assist, and that helps me. And why? Because I want to grow and I want to get better. And as things come on board, I want to improve as I go, and I want to be a better version each day for me and get better at what I do. So, in regards to the soil question, I'm a big believer of utilizing the local soils in your areas. The local soils in your area,
Interesting. Right.
in your state, but also around the country, bring those unique characteristics out. You know, they might let them shine. People will say that drop-in pitches have reduced that ability for that local soil to shine because they're all the same. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that. I do it to a certain degree that they do create some challenges, but I'm seeing it firsthand from around the country that they're not all the same. And I believe that you need to use the soil. So there's no point everyone trying to get that same blend of soil like they do in other
Yeah.
parts of the world. We are so fortunate to have different clay around different parts of Australia. We should be encouraged to use that, and we should be, as heads of the curating family in our states, the different curators should be, we should be driving it and finding the next batch of soil and supporting. And we should be, we are, we're working hard with Cricket Australia and their state associations to ensure that there's enough supply to last for, decades to come, hundreds of years.
I was thinking about because the thing about using the different soils or like the local soil, there is in Australia definitely a difference in not that I've ever played or anything, right? But like you hear on the commentators and the TV and all the players will be like, there's a difference between playing at the MCG and playing at the WACA. There's a difference between playing at the WACA and playing at Optus Stadium. There's a difference between and it makes it interesting for the viewer because if you were to have 5 cut and paste stadiums around the country that all had the same pitch,
Yeah.
you kind of know after the first game how they're going to go.
Yeah.
But you might have a pace, you go to the Gabba and you get a certain type of play from there, and maybe one team demolishes the other, but the next one's going to be different. And how's Adelaide going to play now? And so it creates that real interest. But the other thing that's really interesting that's been happening, which I'm sure you're all over, is some of these traditional the expectations that we have of certain pitches are changing. Like Sydney isn't spinning as much as what it used to. And what do you think is it the drop in pitch, or is it a change in philosophy, or what's happening to these pitches where Optus doesn't bounce like the WACA and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah, well, look, the clay content is a critical component, isn't it? The particle size, what it's made up of. So, that WACA is the highest clay content in world cricket. So we know there's going to be pace and bounce at the WACA. Gabba is second, and it's slightly under. So we know the majority of the time that they're going to get pace and bounce it. And then there's a few of us all around that low to mid 60s, and we know that ideally Sydney should spin. The challenges you face around the country with drop-ins, I really love what they're doing over in WA and Perth. They've tried really hard to get the same clay, or they've got the same clay as what they've used in the WACA. I think they're back to where they were 20 years ago. So I think that's been a massive, huge success. It cracks, it plays up, it's got good pace and bounce. I reckon it's brilliant, whether it's at Optus or at the WACA. The feedback that I get from talking to the players is it's back to where it used to be, and it's fantastic. So I love seeing that. In regards to Cricket Australia and the state curators, we get asked to produce shield pitches exactly like a test pitch. Okay,
Yep.
so whatever we do for one, do for the other, and bring your natural characteristics out to shine. So we know what we need to do to produce a shield pitch. We know what we will mirror that for a test match. So our shield pitches, they're not trial matches or anything like that, but they're warm up sort of for the big test match. So what we do in a shield, we will do with the view of doing the same preparation for a test, and they mature every year and they change. So what you do one year, you can't always do the next. So you keep learning and you keep tweaking and you keep asking for feedback, and you keep striving to get that 2016 South African test match, that perfect pitch, because that's your benchmark that you look to, and you're trying to beat that all the time. And that's through feedback, but that's through measuring and monitoring and understanding, but it's also through a gut feel and trying not to overcomplicate things. And that's easy for me to say. Those that know me, I'm classic at overcomplicating, but try to keep it simple and keep your philosophy straightforward and go with your gut, but use your technology and measuring to assist with your decision making. So, and the difference, between 20 or 30 years ago to now is the amount of content we get on at our grounds, the ability to, then you can't get through the SCG and have no grass on your square at the end of the year, because in 2 weeks' time he's got AFL and NRL and everything else. So Adam has to protect the square 12 months of the year, and they're working really hard over there to get the pitches to spin and to work through the challenge they've got, and the weather's changing. They've had a lot wet January and February, so it's understanding the challenges that every curator's got, and working through those challenges and supporting the decisions that they're making and why they're making it.
Well, I wonder how the rain's gone, because the last few years at Sydney, I think I can't remember how many in a row. This is just off the top of my head, but there's been many games that have had rain delays and significant amount of game time. And surely because this is my rudimentary understanding of it, is the more dustier and drier it is, and it sort of gets older and warms down, then it spins more, right? So wouldn't there, if it's moisture in the air, maybe that's limiting how much it's going to break up, and
100%, and it's not deteriorating. You got covers on a lot more during preparation, so the pitch doesn't dry out the way you would like it to. So it's cooler, it's wet, you got covers on and off. The pitch will behave differently than what it was 10, 20 years ago when it was hot and dry. So all of those factors need to be brought into consideration when you're trying to work out what's the best way to get 20 wickets. At the end of the day, your job is to provide a surface where the bowling team can take 20 wickets. For us and Cricket Australia,
hopefully not in one day.
For us, 10 wickets and 300 runs is what you're after. Now that's easier said than done. So that means we got, entertaining, players are playing their shots, wickets are falling, fans are engaged. But to say that we can do that every time, it's pretty hard to do that. So and our role is to produce. Day 5 is great, but if you can have a game finishing late on day 4, in my head, day 5's used for inclement weather and for negative mindset. The team's behind and they just need to shut up shop. And CA that's their view as well. So have a look at driving that game, keeping it moving forward, not losing too many wickets. 10's a nice number. 8, 7. Your wickets are falling and it's moving around quite well.
Back to the gut feel. I want to talk about rain delays and all that sort of stuff soon, but back to your gut feel, right? Like when I started in the industry trying to really get nice turf, I just started following basically. I'd look up the products, I'd follow the recommended, application rate and, application window and all sorts of stuff of the product. And then you start getting this feel when you get used to, okay, I get used to how it responds, and I can start to see that, say, the nitrogen's wearing off in the fertilizer, and yeah, my schedule might be a little bit like this, but I can change it because I've got my gut feel now, and you can just sort of, you get to a point where you can look at a turf and go, and like, okay, this is just in my world, right? I look at a turf and I go, that's a really sandy soil. It's going to need more feeding, but I'm going to change this because if I feed it too much, I'll thatch it up. And if so I have programs as guides, but I'm happy with the clients that I work to chop and change just on gut feel, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what on a much more intricate and much more scrutinized and much more serious level, it's kind of what you're talking about. So what is the biggest thing that you've changed your mind on, or that you've changed your practices on, that you're doing from gut feel, that it's maybe the textbook taught you a certain way and you've moved on and you're like, no, actually, no, if you tweak this, that gets you the results? Is there anything coming to mind?
Yeah, 100%. Measuring our moisture and our bulk density, so how hard the cricket pitch is. We would never. It would be a feel of the pitch, or a knock, or that's hard. Got that right. How good's that? You don't really know what's going on in the soil, under the grass.
Yeah.
So we do testing now that'll give us scientific testing to give us an understanding of the moisture content in the pitch,
right,
and the hardness of the pitch. Other than
so, whereabouts do you take that from? Because you can't. Well, surely you couldn't take a section out of the middle of where Patrick Cummins is going to be trying to hit his Yorker or something.
Yeah. So nowadays there's we use 2, maybe 3 different methods. So we literally, the year before drop-in pitches started, we wanted to collect data off of the old square. I listened to a seminar with a guy called Ernie Gamelin from Ground Science out of Victoria. I think the conference was in Melbourne. He spoke about this testing and measuring that he does with this nuclear gauge, this radiation gauge that measured moisture and bulk density. Yeah, it's like an X-ray of the pitch. I was a guy called Peter Seamos, and those that know Peter, he's one of the big players, big in regards to drop-in pitches. Was part of the development of drop-in pitches from day dot, and a wealth of knowledge. I was sitting next to Peter, and I said, "This is so interesting." He said, "I know him. I'll introduce you." We got talking, and Ernie came over. He came over on holidays with his family.
Can't get away from work.
Each morning he come in and he measured the pitch for me off of the old square. And from that, we put a presentation together, told work how important this is, and we purchased the gauge. It's a radiation gauge. It's got nuclear elements through it, and we take an X-ray of the pitch. We do every day of preparation. We try and get out there and take a X-ray. It puts it in backscatter, and it just puts these frequencies up and down about 4 to 5 inches, 125 mil through the pitch. Gives us an average of what the moisture is and the compaction of the pitch, how hard the pitch is. And from that, it helps us understand what's going on. And the reason we did it with the old square, with drop-ins, is we needed data to try and replicate and try and mirror what was happening to what needed to happen to what was happening. And then we also got Ernie to take a sample of our soil and test it in a laboratory sense to tell us what our ideal bulk density and moisture was. Where does that line graph of the peak bulk to get that best compaction? And we know 1.744 gravities and 27.5 roughly % moisture is our ideal. So if we can try and marry those two up with our testing, we know that's where our ideal range is to, we try and start there on day one of a game. And then over time, as it dries out, the bulk density will go down. But the same at the start, when there's too much moisture, the bulk density will go down. As the moisture dries out, it goes up. And at that intersection where it hits that peak, then it starts doing the other and it starts affecting. And that's where that deterioration comes from. So over 10 years of playing around with this, we feel we've got a better understanding than if we didn't do it at all. So I do it regularly. Sometimes I don't do it. I still like to go back to the gut feel, but it's that. But it's really good to train up my staff. We're learning with my assistant curators when we've started this all the way through about what is that ideal, and it's so much more than just the moisture and the bulk density. It's a grass coverage, the matter grass, how thatchy it is. It's your renovations, when did you do them? There's so much that goes into them, but it helps you understand your timing, what the weather's doing, how much water to put into it, and where to go. So that's the biggest change I've seen in pitch preparation in the last 10 years. And whether it's this gauge or whether, we're now taking cores out and we chop our cores up. Sorry, mate. We chop the cores up and we measure, we do the same, but we put it into a spreadsheet and get our moisture and our bulk density at the first inch, second inch, third inch, and fourth inch. So we can understand how the moisture is behaving are we getting moisture through the profile like we were 7 or 8 years ago? And we know that in the last 3 or 4 years, we're finding it harder to get the same moisture down into the third and fourth inch as what we were 7 or 8 years ago. So we then can come up with strategies on tweaking things to improve that, to improve our management of that, to get that moisture down. And we wouldn't be able to do that if we were just going with that gut feel, that pushing your thumb into it, tapping it, flooding it up, because trays are different to normal pitches. Ours won't crack like the old ones used to. Over in Perth, they do. They crack. They've got that higher clay content. But ours won't. So we've got to do things differently. So that's really important. They're the biggest things that I've seen. And most curators are doing some form of measuring or testing these days. Some more than others, and some will just take a core and just look at it, feel it, see if there's any horizontal layers in there, or what the root structure's like, or how compact does it feel, what's moisture like, just by feel, and they don't do much else. But you're right, you're not taking a core at a length, unless you can't get 20 wickets. You might do that, might play up.
Give something to aim for.
But you take your core in a non-evasive space where it's not going to matter, and somewhere where it's going to give you a reasonably consistent and confident area that you think you've got to get the right measurement, not in an area that it might give you a false reading. So, and the radiation gauge, we measure every 2 metres down the pitch from popping crease to popping crease, because it's non-invasive, so we can do it, doesn't mark anything. And we've done it for 10 years and we haven't told anyone about it. We keep it to ourselves. I didn't tell any curators about it for the first few years, because you had some of the older curators there that were big on the gut feel, and I'm big on that. But you don't want to be telling people what you're doing. You're just trying to gather information to yourself to get better at what you do. So there's a few people do it that way. A few people do cores, a few people do cleg testing, but you can't put a cleg on a wet pitch because you leave it indentation. And they got their own little ways of testing and that work for them. But what we have found, I think Cricket Australia would agree with this, that when there's a movement of curators like there was a few years ago, what is important is to gather some information that can be passed down to the next curators coming through. And that's what we find here, is we're able to train up the assistant curators, the ones under them, and because you've got a bit of not a pecking order, but I've always got the assistant or the two assistants trying to knock me off. So you're always trying to work through and train them up, and then there's the next one coming in behind him out on our number 2 ground or our practice pitches. So it just helps fast track education and learning.
I was thinking, like, with your gut feel as well, has there ever been a time where, say, you're a little bit stumped and you're like, something's not quite right, what should I do? And late in the night or something like that, you're like, damn, I got to go do this. And you go all the way back to work, or you're about to apply something and you just get this gut feeling like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to water. I'm not going to put this product down because I feel like, and you've changed it last minute and it really worked out. Is there a story like that you can look back on?
There's a story where I had a terrible pitch because I went with gut feel.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to encourage you.
Where it was
terrible.
Throwing you under the bus. I can remember going out when everyone left and brought it out and tested and went, won't do that again. But no, we do it. We do it a fair bit in regards to we'll test normally early afternoon, trying around that same time. And what it does do is go, okay, we want to give it a little bit more moisture. We'll measure it and we'll go, actually it's saying that we don't. And sometimes it can just pull you back and say, no, actually, go with what you know, that the science is there. It's there for a reason. Let's back that science in. It's telling us the moisture's fine. And you don't do it. So it just helps with those decision making. We've also done it where we've gone India in about 17 or 18. It was a day game and it was really hot, and leading into it, we were like, the measurements were saying don't water. We had moisture there, don't. We were having 40 degrees, mid-low 40s in the first few days. And I went, nah, we're going to put some water into it. I don't care what it says. And it was slow on day one because of that moisture. So we probably learned from that, saying, actually, we didn't need to. So there are more learnings in hindsight. So post the event that you look back at and go, okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
How much of a difference does, because this is the thing that's really interesting, is when you're cutting well, you say cutting the turf, sometimes there's not really anything left, right? Like it's a pitch. But then some people will leave like they'll say there's a lot of grass on the pitch, and to somebody who goes nothing about cricket, they still can't really see any grass on the pitch, right? It just, there's hardly anything. But how much of a difference would, say, like 2 or 3 millimeters of grass actually make to a game? Is it like night and day, like difference, or is it no? You actually have to put quite a big amount on there to make it different.
I don't get caught up on high to cut these days, Luke, because we get asked that a lot from the journos, and there's so much more that goes into it than the high to cut. So we have probably changed our pitch preparation more than anyone in Australia. I was going to say the world, potentially, in regards to where we were in 2013, 14 to 15 onwards. We would start our Adelaide Oval traditionally would be start your pitch 6 to 8 millimetres and finish it at 4. White ball cricket, 2 or 3 mil you'd get down to. You wouldn't wet the pitch up a lot after you started. You'd get your timing right, roll it out. In 13 and 14 was a lot along the same. 14 we went really radical, and because we couldn't get results or wickets falling, we went dry. We couldn't, definitely turned. If you look at the replay of the India test, there wasn't. It was a dust bowl. Ward block holes turned big. Nathan line was getting them to grip and rip big. But we used an abrasive surface to get reverse swing. That's how the quicks come into it. And it worked, but it just never felt right. It felt like the preparation wasn't right. Balls weren't coming through a lot. In 15, we got told we're having the first pink ball test. ever in the world. And your pitch is abrasive. We need to look after the ball. The ball was still being worked on and improved, but it was really abrasive and it goes soft after 20 overs. So from that day on, we've gone a mat of grass. So when we talk grass at the start of, when I said about 2015 World Cup, that was in that February period, our finish height was 6 millimetres. But there was no thatch there, no mat of grass. It was a soft leaf, scarified top dress, 6 weeks out, promote just leaf growth, no mat, beautiful fresh soil. And we'd fold that leaf in and the ball would just kiss off and come through really well. Get your moisture right with your testing, try and get your timing right. And they're as quick as what I've ever seen in Adelaide. All right, so that next year, let's do the same, but let's have a mat of grass. We don't want to be the curator. I don't want to be the curator in Adelaide where you don't pick a spinner for a test match, because Adelaide known for spin to take wickets. So we went, okay, well, how do we protect the ball? We can make a green seamer, but we don't want that. So we'll leave a coarse mat of grass on it, have this same philosophy in pitch preparation, but with a coarse mat on, and 6 mil with a mat of grass and 6 mil with no mat or thatcher grass will behave completely different. So I just say to everyone, it's about the renovations and your preparation in the months before. For us, it's the preparations we do at the end of our cricket season in February and early March, which is against what you get taught when to scarify and do the work on your pitches. But we do that because we can't afford to be scarifying and thinning out our longer format pitches in September. We can't do that because we need that mat. We can't get that thatch of grass back if we do it then. So we do ours at the end of the cricket season. We try and get the grass back as quickly as possible with growth mats. Hope weather's on our side. Go into the season, 6 months' time. Put the cricket pitches, to bed is what I call them. Put them to bed for the winter. Let them be. Let them go dormant if they have to because they're not getting run on. That's a beauty with drop-ins. They're sitting behind a fence. They're secure. We get out there and cut them, look after the winter grass, the power, put some fertiliser on when we need to. But if they want to go off for a little bit and go dormant, they're allowed to, and then we'll pick them back up when the cooch starts moving and the soil starts warming up again before we bring them in. So for us, it's around that mat of grass. What's the renovations practices? How are we doing it? And touch wood, so far it's been going quite well, and the feedback is there's a really good contest, and it's the quicks are taking wickets, the spinners are taking wickets. I ride every ball, mate, so I can't relax during I'm getting better. You'd hope you would after 13 years, but I ride every ball. There's too many wickets. There's not enough wickets, not enough runs. I need a partnership. Yeah. David Warner, doesn't understand why I never want to see him score 300 at Adelaide Oval. I said 100's good enough, Davey, not 300. So that to me, I know that the contest isn't right. But again, that's just me. Those that know me, I just want it. I want it to be. You want the pitch to have challenging moments for the batters and bowlers, and vice versa. You want, when the ball gets a bit older, you want the batters to be able to cash in and get some partnerships. But I'd be lying if I said 100 is nice, but players scoring 200, I get worried on drop-in pitches that they will go. They're going flat and they're not deteriorating, and if they start getting those runs, I get worried. So, and you know what? Most times they come back and say, "What are you worried about? You idiot! It's fine. It's played well." But that's just me. That's my makeup, which is fine.
I wanted to ask you this. This might be somewhat controversial, but in the Ashes that just happened in England, right? I've got a quote here from Ben Stokes. He said, "We've been clear with the ground staff what type of wickets we want, and they have been responsive. We want flat, fast wickets. We want to score quickly. If that brings Australia, if they bring Australia's guys in, we'll be happy. I'm smiling because I'm looking forward to it. That was controversial because a lot of people were saying like a cricket captain should just let the curator do what the curator was going to do. They shouldn't be stepping in and trying to dictate so that you produce a pitch that suits their style of play, or the English, because it was over in England, the Ashes that time, not in Australia. Right. And then some people were like, no, well, and the conversation is, well, India basically has a type of pitch that suits them, and Australia has a type of pitch that, and that's why it's so hard to come to Australia and win. It's so hard to go to India and win, and what's wrong with it? And then you got other people who are like, it's the worst thing ever. It's unsportsmanlike. It was this big controversy, at least in this world. What's your opinion on that, and how do you feel about captains and coaches trying to influence the style of play?
Yeah, I hate it. I think it's bullshit. So sorry. No,
Fine.
Yeah, no, you don't have to delete that. That's my view. For me, they've got their style of play, and that's all fine. As I said, wherever you go in the world, you should have my view is you want whoever comes to Adelaide, whether it's Shield cricket or international cricket, I want consistency. I want people to know what you're going to get every time you get here, whether it's the Australian players coming in and playing a Shield game, they know that Shield pitch is going to be like their Test pitch, and the Test countries that come know what they're going to get year in, year out.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency, and that's what we're after. To come in here and say, I've been to countries around the world where they will say we will dial up pitches and dial down pitches. When you dial up pitches, you are making them fast and bouncy, and they're seaming around. Now, you're dialing up pitches for normally subcontinent teams because they're used to the drier, flatter, spinning pitches, and will dial down when you're playing against teams that have got really good quicks. Because you're trying to produce pitches to suit your team. I just don't believe in it. We've never had it here. Never had it here in my time as a curator, and I've never seen it in my time at Adelaide Oval, which is 27 years. So for me, let the curator produce the pitch. The players, you play it, and you play the best you possibly can on that pitch. And our role is to produce a pitch that is an even contest between bat and ball. Now, that's where it's at. So I believe in that 100%. So if other countries want to change from series to series based on what their team they're playing, that's their decision. But I don't know. I didn't like hearing that around with Ben talking about flat pitches. I don't see that as the right way in England. It's not what I expect when I turn the telly on watching an Ashes, to get flat pitches where they can just try and play baseball and score big runs. But that's it. So it's probably similar in India. It wouldn't feel right if you were coming in and it was a green seamer. So all I would say, all I want to see is a good contest between bat and ball. What do you need in your part of the world to get 20 wickets? But for it to be a good contest. So, and we don't always get it right wherever we are around the world, but we should be left as curators. We should be left to our own devices to do what we feel is right for our soils to get that contest.
I feel like the sport, the idea of a sport is or the cricket is it's supposed to be a gentleman's sport. It's supposed to be not about necessarily about ego, and of course those things get in there, right? But it's been about respect, and that's why things like the underarm bowl, that happened back in the day were just so like criticized because it's not fair, and that's what it's about. May the best team win, sort of thing. And that's what I feel when I was reading that. I was like, that seems to me like it's playing a little bit. It's manipulating things, to suit yourself, and that's not really what it's about,
But
And it
happens, unfortunately, and it's happening more. So, I won't go into every country around the world, but you think about the countries that it happens. They want to. It's so important to win away, but to definitely not to lose at home. So you need to. It seems to be going the way of what do we need in regards of a pitch to give us the best chance to beat that team in your country. So what are their strengths? What are your strengths? What do we need to do in the regards of a pitch? From a curator and coming in, getting told to change the way I do things from pitch to pitch, I wouldn't cope with that too well. And the beauty with Cricket Australia is they've never ever have they asked us to do that. Have we been told at an international level to produce a certain type of pitch? To the point that Cricket Australia want New South Wales or Sydney SCG to produce pitches that spin. Right? They want that characteristic to be back there, and they want it for their Shield game. They want it for the Test match.
Yep.
Do you think the Australian cricket team want to be playing India on a spinning SCG pitch on
No.
the fifth Test match? Of course they
No.
don't. So Cricket Australia are telling us as curators, this is what we want from you guys around the country. So they're standing up and they've got a strong view on what they want to see in a pitch, and they back us in and they support us, and the communication between curator and states and the coaches, is whether it's international or your state coaches, is real, and it happens, and we're all on the same page on what we're trying to produce. So we don't get asked to do that, which is it's good. It's good. But again, we don't work for Cricket Australia. A lot of the curators around the country, I would assume, have some involvement with or it's easier to do when they work for the Cricket Association, for their country cricket.
Yeah. Well, I feel like for me as a fan, you might say, well, you want to see your team win. Right. And you really do. Like, there's usually 5 test matches in our summer, right? It's not like an AFL season where there's 20 games or something like that, or or more if you get the finals. Like you got 5 big test matches, and the cricket diehards, the test match is the pinnacle. I love the Big Bash. It's very entertaining. I love coming home in the afternoon and there's a game on. Like, I really do. I really enjoy it. But, if you ask me, like, and WA does pretty well, but ultimately WA, the Scorchers winning the Big Bash is not as important to me as the test matches. It doesn't have the same significance. You've only got 5, or sometimes 4, maybe sometimes more, but usually, you have usually one major series. And if we won a series and it came out later on that we were modifying our pitches, it would feel like it wasn't as good of a win. And that was your whole year. It's the exact opposite of hearing what we started the podcast with, Mitchell Johnson just bowling out of his skin on a pitch that didn't really suit him and making you look good, instead of it the other way around, where the curator makes him look good because you got it to crack up on the second day, or something like that. And I hate it when you have I hate it when the ball has such a difference as well. Like, I don't like it when, say, England are playing and maybe they have a terrible ball and it doesn't swing, and then Australia comes in and it's 15 minutes later, we get a new ball and it's swinging, and you just go, I feel for England, or I feel for India, or whoever it is we're playing, where the ball has that kind of thing.
Ashes last year, the fifth
right,
test,
exactly.
Changed the ball over and it was like a brand newie. So, look, I don't get, I have my views on it, but I don't get too caught up on it. I love what they're doing here in Australia. I love how they're allowing us to bring our unique characteristics to the fore and letting it shine. And they're supporting us and encouraging us. If they, who knows, down the track we might get asked to do that. And that'll be an interesting conversation if it ever happens. But I don't see it ever happening. But it happens a lot throughout the world, and you don't have to be too smart to understand and watch and see it happening. And as you said, they're open to it now. They're openly saying that for us to win the games. Yeah. This is what we want in our pitch, and this is our expectation.
Exactly. Yeah, that quote wasn't behind.
No, he come out to the world media and said that, and you actually respect them for that. There's nothing to hide.
True. That's true. Yep.
You respect them for it, and I think that's why you really enjoyed going 2-0 up on pitches that were trying to suit for themselves. And if only we had got that one last win, would have been perfect.
Yeah, but of course, even though we retained the Ashes, of course England got the moral victory, didn't they? Because that's really what counts at the end of the day.
So they say, but yeah, it'd be nice to win. Actually, nice to officially win over there, even though.
Yeah, well, but please don't doctor the pitches, because we want to. I know that you won't, having said that, but we want to win fair and square. The other thing that really annoys players, fans, right, is rain delays, right?
Yep.
And the thing that is, like, we understand it's raining, okay, put the covers on. What is infuriating is when the umpires, it's dry, and you feel like you could go and play, and you're sitting there like, man, come on, let's get back on. Then they have a lunch break or something stupid. But tell me from your perspective, how important is it actually if there is some rain? Like, how much of a difference does a little bit of moisture make to the pitch? Is it really going to make it unfair? Or is it more like, why do we have to wait so long? Basically, that's what I'm asking. I'm venting at you now. Almost 30 years of being a cricket fan. It's like, come on. I just want to watch it.
Well, once a coin is tossed, the sort of handed over to the umpires and the referee. So we're governed by them. They'll tell us, how the game's going to go ahead. Our job is to get it covered up as quickly as possible. There are times they're communicating with you all the time, whether that's sort of looking at you by eye, you sort of saying like, you're all right, stay out there. Maybe not so much at international level, but or the fourth umpire might come around. We might let them know, or get contact back up to the match referee to say, yeah, there's a couple little scuds coming through, little showers coming through, but not a lot in it. It's only light. Reckon you can play through it. They do they want to keep it out there, so they are trying to stay out there, but at times also they're looking at the bigger picture in regards to making sure that if there's some shower around for a few hours, that it's not going to affect the performance of that team when it's going to be sunny for the next 4.5 days. So they try and get that balance right. They try to understand how wet the outfield is, so that it's not going to affect the ball. They would err on the side of caution, with the view that they can make up time each day, starting early each day to make that time up over the rest of the course of the game.
True.
So, you have moments where you can get frustrated because you want to get the game on, especially a day-nighter. Day-nighter in Adelaide, you know that night period is the entertaining one where it does behave differently. And if you've had a pitch where it's a bit on the flat side and you just want a few wickets, you're wanting to rush through and get the covers off so they can get back out there. So you can speed the game up and get it going. And they're really measured. They're looking at the bigger picture there, and they're just saying, look, get it right, take your time, get it off, rope the outfield, make sure. And when it gets dark at night, roping the outfield doesn't really do much. It's going to stay wet. So they're the times that are frustrating from my end, is and I guess the fans end that it stopped raining. But the outfield is just a little bit on the damp side, that it's going to soften the ball up and get too greasy. So it's the umpire's right. It's better off being patient and making those overs up the next day or over the coming days if it looks dry.
So what would happen hypothetically if you just kept playing? I don't know if you do that in like a lower level game or anything like that where they might play a little bit longer. Is it going to ruin the pitch like real bad? If
it can change, it can definitely change. It'll change the pitch. So if you've got grass on it, like we've been leaving in the last 8 years, it can, and it gets that light bit of moisture. What'll happen is it'll quicken the pitch up, so it'll skid through and really kiss through, which is great. T20 cricket, when you get a film of moisture on it, it can change it up that it's flying through and it's electric and it's, runs are being scored and you're like, how good's this? It can go too far where it's getting a bit slippery and a bit dangerous out there. So you'll see they'll play through more often than not in T20 because it's a shorter format. Test matches, or Shield matches, we've had it where they've played through. It's hailed. The pitch has got hail on it before we could get the hessians and the cover down. We put it down, we take it off. And the grass just, as it dries, just releases out of that soil a bit and it almost pops. And as it pops, it starts to nibble around all over the place. So it can improve conditions for the bowling team. Might assist the batting team for a little while there's a bit of moisture there and it's kissing through and it's not doing as much because it's just skidding off. But as it dries and it releases, it nips around all over the place, so it can. So they're just trying to keep. The decision is really about consistency with the pitch, consistency with the playing conditions at all times, and with the belief of making up time. The frustrating part is when they've got the ability to come back out, and then it's a lunch break, and you're like, oh, really? Another 40 minutes lost. But they try to factor all that in, Luke. They really do. They'll try and take an early lunch with a view to get back out there, and they're looking at every way possible to make up as many overs as they can. I know it doesn't look like it, but when you're talking to them in the middle, they're trying to work through scenarios of getting out there as quick as possible and to keep those overs going and not to lose any overs.
Have you ever had, leading up to a test match or a big one-dayer or something like that, or even like a Shield final, like a really big event, have you ever had an accident like a hydraulic leak or someone spilt something or someone's taken a chunk out of, a part of the pitch or something like that accidentally, like a last-minute emergency like that ever happen and just all of a sudden all the alarms are on, it's go time, we got to try and fix something, Anything like that ever happen?
Touch wood, not since I've taken over, but when I was just one of the groundsmen, we had a hydraulic leak and had to re-turf 3 sides of the pitch, just a sod width, and people must have known, but it was pretty stressful for Les, and just got the turf and it went, did it. Didn't affect the game at all. We've all had issues with water running over a pitch, trying to get water into the rest of your square and getting that little bit too much and walking away and it's just ran in onto the pitch. So had that, which has provided some really stressful moments where we've gone, how do we fix this? And had an incident.
Get the blower or something and blow it back off again.
Mop it off, blow it off. This was it's about 5 days out from our first ever day-nighter. Had the drop in out.
Okay.
It was a night of AC/DC concert. It's the afternoon. Water got on the pitch either side, so it was a lot of overwatering. I went out and just panicked, and we ended up mopping it up, letting it go for a long walk. I think through the process and basically re-wet it and start it again. And we've had it where we've had an issue with fertilising, and human error, over fertilised a strip through the middle of a test pitch and didn't thought we had rectified it. And the week leading into the test match starting preparation, all the stars aligned for all the wrong reasons, and we had a massive amount of grass and mat of grass that we just couldn't control, which was probably the most stressful period I've ever had in leading into a test, just trying to navigate our way through that. And everything we normally do, we had to change and do things. And we got there. We got away with it. And nobody really noticed, so which is
okay, cool.
nice. A few people asked some questions. No, nothing to see here. We're all good. So those that know me, I'm transparent, so they must have seen the sheer terror on my face and the stress on my face. So you're all good. Yeah, all sweet. But it was pretty challenging. But yeah, you live and you learn, don't you?
What's the most embarrassing moment of your career? Whether it's right when you're a little kid, not a little kid, but you're an apprentice, or you're first starting out, you made the mistake, something like that. When I was talking with John Ledwidge about the Premier League and stuff like that. I was things like asking him like, do you do the lines? Because could you imagine if someone got it wrong? And he's like, yeah, sometimes people get it wrong and you got to wash it off as quick as possible. And that's embarrassing, just a little thing like that in front of, how many people watch you on TV. But is there a moment like that where you've slipped up, stuffed up, something that's coming to mind?
No, we don't make mistakes in Adelaide.
Okay. Must be like me then.
My biggest one that I can remember, thankfully, outside of the ones I've spoken to you about, is probably starting off in the state practice, our practice pitches. So when you work your way through, you start off on our number 2 ground, you go from number 2 to our state practice, and then if you're good enough, you end up out on the main oval. So I got asked to start to look after the state practice when a retirement happened. And we marked out the pitches. Your pitches are 66 feet from stump to stump. But we measure them off of our back fence. Greg Chappell was the state coach who, is an icon, is just a legend. When the first time he ever called me by my name, I went, Greg Chappell knows my name.
Yeah.
I was a young fella. Yeah. He knows my name, how good. But I can remember around that time we measured the pitch and we went 66 feet. We'd go 4 feet off of the fence and then do it. I was at the measured end, not the start, not the dumb end, and I put it at 66 feet, but I didn't realise that he hadn't moved off of the fence. So the pitch was actually 62 feet.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so at 4 feet. So the bowlers were bowling really quick. The batters were getting hacked.
Oh, 4 feet faster than normal.
Yeah. The bowlers couldn't quite get their legs right, and I didn't pick it up. So we'd send it up their training, and Greg picked it up, and it took him a while, and then he come and said something, and it was like, oh. So I'm known to swear a bit, so I swore a fair bit. I was just gutted. The guy that I looked up to that was like a hero, and I was like, I've stuffed up in front of this superstar in one of my first sessions looking after this area. So yeah, that's one. Hopefully, I don't think Greg would remember it, but I'll never forget it. Yeah.
Would you feel really embarrassed if he did? Would you feel
I'd laugh about it now, but they're the things. I mean, there's certain things in your life in there that you'll never forget. There's conversations you had, whether it's, with Les or with your certain staff or certain coaches or captains or players that, and memories from games that you'll take to your grave with you that have helped shape you as a curator and helped guide you through your journey at wherever you are. So I'm sure it's the same everywhere. I've got quite a few that I'll always remember that has helped me. Sometimes I tell him. So if I see him, I say, mate, you don't realise, how important that conversation is. Greg's
Yeah.
one. Justin Langer, a few chats with him. Ronnie McDonald, now the coach. He was over here as a player. I was going to say when he was washed up from Victoria, but I shouldn't say that in case he hears it. But at the back end of
Yeah.
his career, he come and played for SA, and in those first few years of drop-ins, he'd been there at the MCG, seen so much, and just talking to him when he was a commentator, I think, and end of his playing, going into commentary and talking around pitch preparation, and just bouncing ideas off of good people who understand cricket. I don't get the game of cricket like they do. I get curating.
Of course, yeah.
What I'm doing from curating, that's my passion, what I hope I'm good at. Cricket, I ask the experts how the pitch is playing and what's going on, because you can't read a pitch. You can't just go by a cricket score, look at the scorecard and say whether that pitch was any good or not. There's so many other things. You can have a really good pitch that a team bats or bowls poorly on, and it's not a reflection of the pitch. So Les used to say the players play the game. Yeah, they do. We can dictate a certain amount of it, but we need to own it when we don't get it right. But just listening to those certain people around the place help steer you in your direction and where you go as a curator. And it's picking those right people too, not everyone. Those that have really got the best interests of cricket and that contest and what your values are. You listen to them, and there's been a few of them over the time that you respect so much.
Is there anybody else who you felt a bit starstruck by? Because I'm sure now you said you're 49. I mean, it probably wouldn't be anybody, right? But I remember you don't know this, but I used to be a competitive swimmer, and I would go to nationals, and nationals is where everybody is, and that's where you qualify for the Olympics or things like that. And I'd been going there for years and years and years. And so I think my first nationals was 2008 or 2009 or something like that. And so I'd be 2008, and it's like, there's Eamon Sullivan, there's Libby Trickett, or, and then there was two major people who made, if you're aware of swimming at all, who made comebacks. One was Grant Hackett, one was Ian Thorpe. 2012, Ian Thorpe was trying to make the Olympics, and he's there, and I'm walking past, that's Ian Thorpe, and I felt after years of being around this, twice a year they had two different nationals, but that's Ian Thorpe, it's just weird. It's like, that's not a TV screen, that's a real human being there, and he's doing his stretches, Is there a moment like that where maybe you're out in the oval and somebody, you're like, that's them in the flesh, it's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I don't know, maybe I've been here for 27 years, so in the early days, yeah, most definitely. I have, of course you do. Like your Shane Warnes, your Mark Taylors, these sort of guys, the people that have helped influence you. So had a conversation that has influenced you or has said something. Those that say stuff nice about you, you tend to have this really good warmth towards. But locally it's, I come to mind. I mean, outside of, people that Les Burnett is the one for me. It was just like the first time I met him, he was like a guru, and he treated you like a normal, like he's just a normal person, but he had such a high profile. He's like a second dad to me. My dad's still around. I'm really close to my dad, but he was always like that father figure. You work hard, you play harder, and to this day we're really close. The people, like I said, whether it's Greg Chappell, Rod Marsh was really supportive along the way and had some really good conversations, who I respect across the whole journey, from his involvement at Saka as a selector, and conversations. Justin Langer, I have so much respect for the way he goes about it. When he was a player and I was young, coming up, they ran back and him and Brad Hogg helped pull covers in our state practice, and there are things you go, Jesus, pouring down with rain and you're helping the ground staff. That you didn't have to do that. Those sort of things that stick to your mind. Conversations from my first test in charge. He was a assistant coach in coaching WA, has guided me in where we are with cricket pitches right now, both positive and, I was going to say negative, we'll call it constructive feedback. Having some good, robust, open conversations around how cricket should be played in our role. So him, Andrew McDonald, Tim Payne, he probably doesn't know it. The conversations with him over the years were brilliant. And, even now, of course, I'm close with Nathan Lyon. So I talk to him a lot, and the other players, Starkey and Hazelwood, and these guys have just getting feedback from them and asking for not support, but just asking for feedback because you're continually wanting to grow.
Yeah. I've got on my list here all my questions, right? So everything's got questions. And then I've got 2 words on here just by themselves. Les Burdett, right?
Yep.
You couldn't have a conversation about this without talking about him. Especially, just those who don't know, he's considered one of the greatest of all times. I'm not in that world, so I don't really know. And, I'm quite a lot younger. Those test matches when you were starting, I'm almost 30, right? So I'm still in my 20s. So, early cricket memories for me are probably one of the earliest ones for me, 06 Ashes, right?
Yeah.
And the famous game at Adelaide where Shane Warne came out and spun them to victory. And one of my best childhood memories is, so this is what I'm getting at. This is a tail end of his career, of Les Burdett's career, but you were there. And what is so special about him, and what has he done for those who are not aware of why he's got such a big name or why he's so respected in the industry?
First and foremost, he's so genuine. So he would rub shoulders with the Prime Minister or me as an apprentice, and he would treat everyone the same. He is such a genuine, caring, loving human being. He worked hard, as I said. He worked hard. He played bloody hard too. He likes to drink, so we all. But he drove a really great culture here. And there were the days when you'd work hard and you'd nick off up to the pub and have 4 or 5 beers and come back to a steak sandwich and come back to work and work for another 3 or 4 hours. You can't do that anymore, right? So
no.
Les can, and he still does. So
he's the only one who can get away with it.
Yeah. But he's just so genuine and so caring. He worked really hard. He was a really good communicator, and he just had a bit of an aura about him. He was always positive, but if he had to pull somebody up, he would pull them up, have a chat to them, and would get on with it. So there was a respect there. He said it the way it was. The biggest difference between Les and myself, if somebody was asking him to do something regarding to, we should do this with the pitch preparation, like at state level, he'd go, yeah, no probs. And he'd just do what he wanted to do. Whereas I'm just saying, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. This is the way we're going to do the pitch. And that's the way it'd be. So he had a really good way of communicating to the players and the coaches and the administrators. And nothing was ever too hard. He always, and that's what he taught us, was working collectively with everyone and coming up for the greater good of the Adelaide Oval. And at test match time, he was the same. He never saw the pressure. He just worked hard. He looked like he was always in control. And the only time I ever saw him not coping was that Test match, that 6-7 Ashes, where it was boring for 4 days, and it was so lopsided, and there wasn't a contest between bat and ball. And day 5, Warney came out, spun them to victory, and off they went. But there were circumstances leading into that. I think Glenn McGrath hurt his ankle, so there was injury issues, and it was really hot. There was issues there, and ended up being an all-time classic Test match at Adelaide. Yep. So that was one day, one Test match where every day, Les, again, if you know him, he'd call it waving the Saka flag. I'm going to wave the Saka flag. And what that meant was getting out and around and mingling with as many people as you can. And that normally went from corporate box to bar to corporate box, and having a beer and socialising and just being that face. So he was as big as anyone at Adelaide Oval, probably just behind Don Bradman in my eyes. You think of Adelaide Oval, you think of Don or Les, and he deserved all the accolades that he got. So yeah, just a ripping human being. But that was the only time I saw the stress in him. And somebody texted him that night, like after that day 5, you saw the release of the stress and what it meant to him. And someone texted him and said, in one day, you've gone from the outhouse, might have been the shit house, to the penthouse in a day. And he just relaxed and had an unbelievable day 5, night celebration. And unbelievable human being. Still talk to him all the time. Don't catch up as much, but yeah, he's as passionate and caring as he always has been.
It's interesting. I love that because your answer isn't, oh, he really knew about grass, like
everything else. He knew his turf and he knew his cricket pitches. One of my best memories of Les was the first time I met him. He came out again, conference, turf seminar day, met him, felt nervous, come up, and he made me feel so relaxed. But Les used to, during winter or in summer, we used to not just do the grass, we used to clean the grounds and do everything. Les would put his blue cotton overalls on, he'd put these little earplugs in, and he'd put a shitty old backpack on his back, and he'd go up and start cleaning the grandstands, all the terrace and grandstands. He'd do it himself, and as an apprentice, you were like, geez, a great Les Burnett. He didn't care. He got in and got dirty with the staff. Didn't matter what job it was. It was united. It was a team, and he got in and did it. So that was Les from I was going to say till the day he retires. He probably wasn't blowing stands as much towards the back end, but I worked with him for 14 years. So, and he just got in there and did it. He tried to find time for the team. He'd always be there at morning tea. He couldn't always be there at lunch, but he'd always make sure he was there. And he has instilled some things that are really important about that, team first mindset and things like that. And people worked for him, not with him. They worked for him because of the type of person he was. So first and foremost, that's what he did. The longer we worked together, he'd come down once a week down to state practice, and he'd tell me exactly what I needed to do and how to do it, and I'd just be nodding, and he'd walk away, normally turn around and go, oh, you're not going to bloody listen to me anyway, are you? And I went, probably not. But that was because I was such a deep thinker, and I still am, and that's my personality, that I would think about things all the time, and I would think about every possible option in regards to preparing the pitch and what I'm seeing, where it's going. And he'd come down for 5 minutes once a week and just, do this, do that, and you'd be like, and you'd do it because he knew what he was doing. But there would be things you'd be going, but I was going to do it this way because of this, and this, and you would have those conversations. But we've always had that open relationship, honest respect for each other, and not just me, everyone that worked for him. yeah, I don't think there'd be too many that would have a bad word to say that know Les.
Tell me about Nathan Lyon now, because for those who don't know, Nathan Lyon he's considered the GOAT in finger spin. So there's leg spin and there's off spin, and obviously Shane Warne is in a stratosphere of his own. But Nathan Lyon, longevity of career, and he's been playing very, very well. And anyways, there was a period of time though where you were his boss, because he was part of the ground staff at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
And so that's always a fascinating story. I actually I did a little podcast. This week is the 6-month anniversary of the podcast, and I did just a tiny little clip where I just said, "Hey, look, this is what's happening," and celebrating, and how cool is it that we're one of the most listened to, and blah 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 blah. And I also said, "Hey, look, if you love cricket, you're going to love the next episode." And I had 2 people message me, and one was like, "You should get Nathan Lyon on," and the other one was like, "Are you getting Nathan Lyon on?" And I was like, "Better, I'm getting his boss on." I don't know how much Nathan Lyon actually knows about turf, to be honest. It's not a cricket podcast, even though I'd love to have him on one day. But what was it like? Was he somebody who was actually really into his turf, or was it more like I needed to have a career and cricket? It's either all or nothing. You get paid billions of dollars, in the IPL, or you're struggling to make ends meet. Was he someone who's really, really into the lawn side of things?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I didn't get him. How long you got to talk about this?
As long as we need. You're the one who's got the time limits.
Okay. I had him for about 10 weeks in the end. And he's the first person I ever employed when I took over. All right. Wow. So I needed somebody. I went to a conference in the Gold Coast. I talked to a curator by the name of Brad Van Dam, who was the curator up at Marnica. And he said, my assistant, second in charge, is going to come and work for you. And I said, Nathan Lyon. And I said, never heard of him. Bullshit, it's not happening. I'm not having he's a cricketer, he does this, does that, but he's a gun. And I said, mate, I don't know who you're talking about. I'll choose who's working for me. I'm not going to get somebody else coming in saying, we'll advertise, we'll get the right person. So we needed, obviously with Les going, we needed another staff member. Come back, and our HR manager said, got this guy, trying to get him. His name's Nathan. I said, Nathan bloody Lyon. Yeah, that's it. And I said, really? Like, we've got to get somebody. He plays cricket. He's a great cricketer. So I said, yeah, all right. I said, nothing against cricketers, but they're untrustworthy because they can't commit to curating because they're playing cricket on weekends when I need them there working.
Yeah.
So anyway, went through. He actually come down. I met him, and I just had a good feeling about this guy called Nathan. And he came in, met him. The job was at Park 25, which is where Karen Rolton Oval is. It's a beautiful setup. Job's down there, 3 grounds down there with practice pitches, centre wicket, 3 centre wickets each ground, pitch of 5 pitches. Went down there, showed him, and he said, I really want to work here. And I'm scratching my head going, you're the second in charge at Marnica. You want to come down and work. And nothing against Park 25, but it was pretty run down. You want to come down and work at Park 25. And I'm scratching my head. And I said, okay. I said, my issue is you play cricket on Saturdays, Sundays, where are you going? And I had a phone call, and I only told Nathan this a couple of years ago. I actually had a phone call. I can remember where I was. I had a phone call from the coach at the time saying, I hear you're looking at this Nathan guy. I can tell you'll have him for 40 hours a week. He will be lucky to be a net bowler for us. And I went,
oh,
really?
Wow.
So I said, rightio, on that, I'll take him. Yeah. So I took this kid, and Nathan, how old would Nathan 35, probably 35, something like that. And yeah, he come on board. He went down to Park 25. He couldn't get picked up. He wasn't even getting picked up for second 11 cricket. So he was, at the time, he ended up going back playing for Canberra in Futures League, the second 11 competition. He ended up he spoke to me. He'd fly out on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday game, and it wasn't every week. It's only a few games here or there. He'd go and get Nathan. He likes to drink, so I think all curators like a drink. So he'd go and have a few drinks after the win or loss. He'd jump on the red eye, come back to work. He'd work Friday afternoon, Friday night, come in Saturday morning, play cricket for Prospect, and he'd do that when he needed to. But he was such a good worker. He knew his stuff. He was passionate. What I loved about him, he has great energy. Great energy. He united our team in a way that he doesn't realise he did, and he kept humour within our team when I was new and finding my way and probably stressing out a bit. He kept it fun and exciting.
Yep.
And Nathan is a smart ass. He's a real, and he still is to this. He's still a smart ass. So when you see him, he's real cheeky, but at the same time, he's positive. He's caring. I had young kids at that stage, and he treated them so well. And when he got through the different competitions, he's always gone out of his way for all the staff that are here and my family. So yeah, he got picked up there. He got picked up. It used to be called, I think they called it like the Baby Bash, like an under 23 tournament in Melbourne.
That sounds pretty bad. That's a horrible name. It's like child abuse.
23 type of thing. So he was playing for Canberra. Darren Berry was the strikers coach. Chuck's game plan was spin to win. He was looking for spinners, and he went, "Who's this kid?" And they went, "Grandsman at Adelaide Oval. He's playing for Canberra." Next minute, eighth come back, and he said, "You never guess I've been." I said, "Oh shit, really? Oh, good on you. Like, fantastic. It's great. Good on you."
Yeah.
Bloody cricketers. I knew my gut was right. You can't trust them because they're going to end up playing cricket when you need them. He got picked. I spoke to Jamie Cox, who was our cricket manager, and I said, "What are you doing to me, Coxie?" And he said, "Oh, we'll just see how he goes. He'd like to get cut from the first squad." He made it, made the second one, made the starting team, made the team of the. I reckon he made the team of the tournament. That was a year before Big Bash, so it was a state base. I reckon he made the team of the tournament and go from there. And then he just went on and played Shield cricket pretty quickly after that. Got picked for Australia A, and then he come back and said he's going to get picked for the Sri Lanka tour, and he doesn't see his time with us much longer. So to this day, I convinced him he needed to give me 2 more bloody weeks because he's dogged it. So he gave us 2 weeks. Nah, never see him again. I see him at test matches every year. So bloody great story, really great story. Rap for him. I didn't realise he had ambition to play Test cricket. I thought he had a passion for turf, which he did. But I didn't realise just how good he was. And he come to, the great story is he come to Adelaide with no promise from anyone. I think Ashley Ross was in his ear telling him there's an opportunity here. I think his coach at the time was telling him there's possibilities and opportunities, but knowing that he wasn't on anyone's radar, that he would have to work hard and earn it himself, and he did. And he's gone on, and to watch him grow and develop, and what I like about him is he's what you see is what you get. He's genuine, he's honest. He probably doubted himself for a hell of a lot of years, and he reminds me of myself a lot of the time. And and then he sort of gets all that sorted, and to see him just do what he's doing and really enjoying his cricket. And he reckons he's going to go for another 5 years. So, but I just love it. I love it.
Well, talking about him going for another 5 years, he got injured in his 100th game in a row without injury.
Yeah.
It was like a record. It was like everyone was celebrating it, like, oh, this is a great achievement, and then he gets injured. But I think he's mended now, isn't he? And he's ready to play again for the new season or the new summer.
He missed out on the last Shield game, but he played the one day here last Friday. So I caught up with him then and had a chat. He's back. He reckons he's fit. He reckons he went to some pretty dark places because he's never been injured. But he's worked really hard. He's got back and away he goes. So yeah, but just such a positive. He's such a positive human being. And his mum when he first got picked at that next test match at Adelaide, she looked me in the eye and said, "Damian, if he ever gets ahead of himself, give him a kick up the arse, knock him back down to size." And he never has. He's always got time. And he ended up working for three of us, three curators. So Marcus Peplin, that's now down in Belrive, was his first boss at Canberra. Brad Van Dam, who was at Canberra for quite a while, 10 or 12 years, and then he come over here and spent his last 10 weeks as a groundsman working in Adelaide. He did. Everyone, if you read all the stories, you'd think he was producing, rolling out the test pitches.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he sat on the roll. He would say he did, but his claim to fame is he cut the Adelaide Oval for that 2010 Ashes game. So when we put the pattern in the Oval for the first time that's ever been a pattern in the Oval was in 2010 when we took over. Was on Nathan was cutting, and he takes the credit for putting patterns in the Oval for the first time over what he would have called a boring billiard table look. His claim to fame. But if you listen to the media, he was producing the test. Of
course,
bit of mayo and everything, eh?
When you retire, they'll say, well, Nathan should replace you because he got that experience for 10 weeks or something like that. You know what I mean? So
he would not get out of bed for what he earns these days.
No, he's probably got plenty as well. Especially he's going to play for another 5 years.
Yeah.
He can pay for your retirement. Well, I wanted to talk to you about equipment as well because I'm really interested in this. Hypothetically, if you're going to have a fire at your shed at Adelaide or wherever it is that you store your stuff, what's the one thing you can run and you can save one tool or mower or whatever one bit of a kit that you've got? What is the one thing that you're running in to save?
Gee, I've never been asked that before. That's a good question. What would I say? I would save our 1951 cricket pitch 3-pin Imperial roller, the old puffer. Been here for 50 plus years. Yeah, 70 years old, been here for over 50. I'd save that.
Are you still using it all the time, or is it a bit of a...
Right. It's a key part of our preparation. It's the one piece of machinery that gives us an edge with our compaction of the cricket pitches. It's not the only one we use. We've got a Mo Master ride on. We've got a Minte walk behind. But the puffer, old puffer, that's you can't buy them off the shelf these days. Just gives us that compaction that we really want. So combination of all rollers is important, and getting the best compaction we possibly can, because that plays a key role during our preparation. Not afterwards. So you never see it come out at the change of innings, because by the time we only have 10 minutes, it'll take us 10 minutes to get out there because it's slow. So we can't get the old deal out there as quickly as what we'd like. So yeah, we get the Mowmaster out there, which does a great job.
But I can totally see that there's a value to it. It's like the scoreboard at the Oval. You know, you can't get rid of those things, or the ladies and members at the SCG or something like that. You know, like there's something about that traditional side of things that is special. You know,
We restored it 2 years ago. We took it away, pulled it all apart, fixed up inside, stopped all the little leaks, and then it was a little project for actually the guys from Toro in Adelaide took it and worked on it. And one of them made it as his little project, personal project, and he restored everything. Found old photos from 70 years ago of what the roof looked like instead of like those white plastic tub type roofs that we had on it. He fabricated one so it replicated what it was 70 years ago, and polished everything up and painted it and new seats and everything. So it's come up a treat. So that's a nod back to history. So when you think of Adelaide Oval, hopefully people see a modern stadium but can see the nods to the history, whether it's a scoreboard or the built in 1911, or it's the 100-year-old Moreton Bays, or the Northern Hound, even though it's new, but it's what makes it's Adelaide Oval. It's the DNA of Adelaide Oval. The architect works on the western side, and the vines growing up and those sort of things. That's what makes Adelaide Oval so unique and beautiful.
What about, we haven't talked at all about AFL yet. We're almost 2 hours into this, right? And I mean, that's just because I love the cricket side of things. But you guys had Gather Round, right? And it wasn't all played at their one stadium, but how many games over that weekend? Because that my assumption is that was a lot of work and quite stressful because of, these very athletic guys in studs running around and trying to keep your pitch together, or the playing surface together. And so what was that like from your perspective?
Yeah, exactly what you said. We had 6 games, 6 of the 9. 2 games went to Nord, which again is a SANFL club. A lot of history, proud history at Nord. Smaller suburban ground, probably not fit for AFL, but just worked for this. And one game up at Mount Barker, they're called the Summit, a new ground up in the hills. So Adelaide was great. A lot of unknowns, Luke. So we knew what 4 or 5 games looks like at SANFL level. 6 games in round 5 after 5 weeks after Ed Sheeran replacing.
Ed Sheeran has come up so much in this podcast.
So you know what I mean? I don't need to go into the lengths of what that did, and that's one of the proudest moments I've had, most enjoyable but challenging and stressful moments, is doing the Ed Sheeran and the replacement, and the team working with HG and our local contractors to execute a tight turnaround. But
if I could just pause you on that, because when we had Matt Oliver and he was talking, he was saying that the replacement, because they replaced their entire thing. Did you replace your entire thing? Because it's a lot more on an AFL cricket side stadium.
So we replaced the equivalent of what he did. So, where rectangle stadiums around 10,000 square metres, we replaced 10,000. And it's huge.
He was saying
probably 5 to 6 times more than any other, 5 to 6 times more than a normal concert, and 3 times more than the second biggest turf replacement, which was Adele, again in the round, stage in the middle. This was 10,000 square metres. It's $1.5 million worth of turf.
Right, because that's what I was trying to get at. Because he was saying it's well into the 7 figures, or well into $1 million. So $1.5 million, and it's crazy to think about how much money. Because what Matt was telling us is that Ed Sheeran pays for it, not him, but the company behind all of that. how much money is he making, or that are they bringing in to be able to like, $1.5 million for turf? Yeah, okay, cool, fine.
Yeah.
We'll do it.
You look at tickets, what, 150, 200. The top end tickets are probably, I don't know, 400 or 500. The merchandise that he would sell would be millions at every venue. He would have got 60 to 65,000 here. It would have been a full house, so he
Crazy.
jam-packed it. You do the math on that, and he's still made a fair killing for one night, and it was brilliant concert for a person basically on his own to do what he does. The stage was unique. Never seen anything like it. The way they built it, the way they set it up, packed it down was such an experience, and the way we got in and fixed it up afterwards was a credit to everyone. They got in, did a really good job. But there's risks there, isn't there? Like you had 5 weeks, how's it going to pull up? We got to get through the first 4 weeks of footy. We then got to manage our training loads. We then got to gather around. What's the weather going to be like? Oh, you've got concerts on the Thursday and the Saturday night. Really? You want to rehearse? When are we going to do our work? We need to. So there was a lot of compromising on our side from what we wanted to do, but it was compromising with regards to the AFL and their rehearsals and working together in the best interests. And it couldn't have gone any better. Our side of Friday night, Saturday morning, we had about 12 to 15 millimetres. We had to adjust and pivot as we went because the rain went up. So we had to aerate, spray penetrants. Yep. We didn't aerate too much because of all the rehearsing and the stage and everything, wheeling that on and off. We didn't want to leave ruts. So we had to do a lot of work after hours that nobody saw. And then Saturday night, during the Port Essendon game, I think it rained for most of the game and it was quite heavy. So Saturday night was a bit concerning. We walked away and there's a couple of areas we went, our worst nightmare in some of the older, heavier areas. Did a couple of things. You have game plans. You probably have 4 or 5 different game plans, and at the time you just you pick one and you execute it, and you go to bed and you get up the next day. And that involves grow lights, blowers, your penetrants, your work that you've done in the weeks leading up, but what are you doing over that 4 or 5 days? So we got to a stage from Friday night, we didn't cut the ground, probably from Friday through till the rest of the weekend, because this is going to sound really poxy, but green is good and brown is bad. Green grass, people leave you alone, but if it muddies up and looks brown, people will go, oh, what's going on there? So we knew that if we had a cut in certain areas, it would have highlighted those bad areas. So we could still see the pattern. It wasn't as sharp as what we'd like and where we were on Thursday, but we got away with it, and we put grow lights out, which was really heat to try and dry the surface out. Yeah. We put fans out there to try and just blow that top to dry it out, and we left them out there as up almost to teams running out, pulled it off, and we got away with it, and everyone spoke quite glowingly of it. But it was a lot of hard work, and Matty does it every year, and Mao did it before Matt. So with Magic Round, so we'd sort of gone in there. I hadn't spoken to Matt. I might have had a quick chat to him, but I've definitely spoken to Mao over the years and the challenges and what they do, and we were confident with the products we were using, that we were in as good a position as we could be. And let's buckle up and enjoy the ride and see where it goes.
Well, talking about that, did you with the products, did you like blast it with nitrogen just beforehand so that it was just rapidly growing, so that when it was getting worn down by the players, something was bouncing back? Or is that going to have some other problems if you do that? Because that's what I would do. If I was just on a rudimentary level, I'd just be like, it's going to get hit. Let's blast it and we'll deal with the problems later. Or is it that like the thatch that would have built up or the growth, it would, like what goes through your mind? Is that too simple a response or, all that kind
Yeah,
of technical side?
yeah, yes and no. So we use a range of products. So we've, every turf manager, I suppose, has their routine. And everyone would have you get your soil tests, your water tests, tissue tests, microbial testing. We do all of that. That helps build our program, helps give us our diet of what the plant needs based on what is the soil showing or what water quality is and the leaf is what's happening. And then we stick to that. And we try to promote a healthy soil structure, root structure, not just through the products we put out, but through, that integrated pest management, that aeration practices, airflow through the soil, what our watering techniques. We try and put every aspect of turf management into the mixing bowl and come up with a recipe that will work. With this one, in the last few years, 3 or 4 years, it's been a lot around root structure, and if we get a healthy, fibrous, robust root system and a good, healthy soil, the microbes are right, and normally the plant takes care of itself. You manage turf decline, right? So from the round end of the season, you're managing turf decline. Whether you like it or not, you're not going to keep it the same. When you have AFL games every single week and you have training a couple times a week and you throw in gather round where you got 6 games and rain and kick to kicks where you got thousands of people out there that love being out there, but turf managers hate it.
Of course.
And everything else. And you manage turf decline, and you just got to try and, instead of it dropping off a cliff, you just want it going down slowly. And then we get a bind mid-round where we try and pick it back up with a hollow tine and give it a rest. And you know what works? Getting off and giving your turf a rest, it actually helps the turf. So really
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works, but it does. So try and give it a rest. So we sort of try and manage that as best we can. But sometimes too much nitrogen, having it really up and about, souped up and humming along, creates a slippery surface. Plants juiced up, and next minute it looks amazing, but then they can start losing their footing because of how juicy that leaf is. So there's a balance. Yep, you got to get it there, and you want it going. You've got to keep it moving, but you don't want to overdo it either. So you're right. There is that bit of, we need to have this plant humming. We need the turf to be really moving, and growing steadily, but not on steroids. Not just shooting where we're bailing it off each day. That's not healthy. So we try and get that balance right, and then afterwards it was practice was really to the footy, to Port and Crows, guys. It's just no training for a few weeks. It's just get off, give it a rest. And they were really good. The clubs were unbelievable. So in the end, we did a lot more captain's run than main sessions. And they respected the challenges that we had. And it's in the best interest for the clubs if we can restrict training, because match day is where it all matters. Yeah. It's about safety's first, isn't it? So safe surface, but
yeah, of course,
aesthetics is still important. The visual aspect is still important, because that gets back to the DNA of the Oval and the brand and the reputation as well.
Has there been a product? So like we talk about fertilizers, right? And someone's completely new to anything with fertilizing. Yeah. They put the cheapest thing out there, and they're going to be blown away, because if they go from no growth in their lawn and it's dry, dying, and just something simple out there, it's going to look amazing. However, the more experience and someone like yourself, who's just at the absolute peak of turf care, basically managing a stadium, has there been a product that whether it's a fertilizer or a wetting agent or a soil amendment or whatever it is, where, or more specifically, I should say, when was the last time a product really impressed you, actually exceeded expectations? You know, you knew it might have been good, but it was better than what you were expecting. Because I've found that, a lot of the time, and I try new things all the time. A lot of the time, there's not that much difference, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
You know?
I do. Where I don't think there's one that you can say, "Oh, do this and it'll change your world." It's a must. I think over time you get little bits here or there, little pieces of golds of nugget that you go that made a little bit of difference, and then you add it to this one, you add it to that one, and
Sure,
before you
yeah.
know it, you've all of a sudden you've got this armory around you that is just has improved your surface. So whether that's a new fungicide coming out, our fungicide regime, ryegrass in our climate in summer is quite intense. Looking at the new fungicides coming out, or whether it's a wetting agent, or whether it's a liquid product of some sort, or we're trialing a granular. We don't just trial for the sake of trialing. If we trial, we'll do it for 12 months and it becomes part of our program, because we feel there might be a couple percent improvement that we're after. And we've had
Mhm.
wins along the way. And then after a while, something else will come out and you'll want to look at it. It's a mindset of wanting to improve all the time. It's a growth mindset, whether it's for yourself or for your surface or for your staff. You can't stand still. In what we're doing, you can't stand still.
Yeah.
You got to keep improving, and you got to get better, and you got to want to get better. And if you don't want to get better, somebody needs to tap you on the shoulder and say, it's time. And I've got a few people that I've said, if it gets like that, please tap me. If I'm not seeing it, tap me. Because if I don't want to be improving, this place isn't for me.
Yeah. Well, what sort of products then are you, or not necessarily that you need to name anything if you're trying to keep trade secrets, but what I want to get at is there's simple fertilizers and there's simple wetting agents, but there's other things that you're doing. I've got a video here actually. Let's put this up. I showed you
Yep.
this beforehand, but there's a video here that I was sent from someone who was telling me that this was almost a problem for you. I'm going to press play on this down here. But for those who are listening only, you've lifted up the tray that has the pitch in it, and there
Yep.
are so many roots growing through beyond what you've expected that you've also
Yep.
lifted up a lot of soil underneath. And
Yep. So that's about 100 mil. So you can see the grey gravel there. There's a gravel blanket under there. And you can
Yep.
see the near side, but the far side, you can see how thick that is. It's about
Yep.
100 mil. And you can see up the top there how fibrous those roots are. Now, there's 100 mil of sand sitting in that. If you were able to shake that sand out, you would have, you can see on the side, they're nearly 200 millimeters
Yep.
long. They're anchoring in, and they're
They're
that long.
coming down
They're
here.
sitting on, because that's sitting on the concrete. So they weren't able to anchor into that sand. So that stuff there excites me. I'm a pretty sad. I'm a turf tragic, but that gets me excited, because that's what we want when we're growing pitches. Our philosophy is to, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a scientist.
Well, I love how you say you're not an expert. You said that before, and I didn't pull you up. But I'm like, you're literally
No, but
10
I haven't
years,
gone into
20
the,
years in stadium stuff,
yeah, okay. So I'm not a scientist who understands the ins and outs of every molecule, and but what I do have is an experience, and of course I've gone and got my diploma, an advanced diploma, and I've done the study, and I'm proud of that. But what I'm trying to get to is, I don't understand the whole synergy between plant soil to pitch soil to sand, and how it all works. But it has to be there has to be a synergy, and what we're trying to have here is a cricket pitch that's made in a tray, which isn't natural, with cricket pitch soil in that's 150 mil side wall there where that steel is. There's 50 millimeters on top, so that's 200 millimeters of clay
Yep.
with a perforated base underneath with a membrane to stop the soil from falling out, but still allowing the roots to get through it, so it's still able to breathe and allow water through it.
Mm-hmm.
Philosophy back in 2011, when I sat there with Les Burdett and Peter Semos, who I spoke about, and myself, and so these two legends in the turf industry, two big alpha males, and little old Damian sitting there trying to navigate through drop-in pitches so they would succeed at Adelaide Oval and not, because they were getting criticised a bit all those years ago, drop-ins in general.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we came up with a philosophy of how we felt it worked, and the philosophy needed to be an ability for the pitch to be as natural as possible, and a want for the grass roots to push through, the turf roots to push through into the sand underneath. So to see that happen just makes me excited, but makes me proud, because we've worked hard to get to this point, and it's happening. These pitches here were built 2 years after the original 8, and we used them out on the oval for a while. This is the middle of our number 2 ground, and they were put out in the middle of number 2 ground, used to train on. They were brought out onto the middle for some shield cricket, with the view that these are slightly higher in clay content than the original ones. The original clay was from the Athelstan region, around 62%. This is down south in Adelaide. It's around 66%, 67%. The reason we wanted to do that was we're looking at, again, local soil, but pace, bounce, deterioration, and it's a legend cooch, not a Santa Ana cooch. So we build them like that. One really good year, great feedback. Second year with a Dukes ball. Second year, early season, Kookaburra, terrible. Deteriorated, but was just a flat stinker until day 4. And so we never used them again. We took the top off them, put them out the back just before COVID, rebuild them, and that's about 3 years later. We were about to pull the trigger on it last year and use it out the middle. Didn't quite get the bounce that we wanted with the testing and the rolling. We just we leave them out there and we use them for training on number 2. But to see that anchor in and just pull all that sand up it was hard work, but that was impressive. Our guys were, hence why the video was taken, was how exciting is this. We got roots, but we got the roots by the testing last year, saying, why is there a lack of bounce in this pitch? What do we need to focus on? So we focused on compaction, really working the tray hard, thinking that because we'd rebuild it, we might need to put a bit more work, and we need to focus on root development. So we've put a program in place to assist with driving our root structure, and a fibrous, healthy root, which is a healthy plant, which will bounce back and give the turf resilience. Yeah. It'll help dry the pitch from deep down. And we put time into, trying to manage organic and things like that. And to see that just really excites us. So yeah, there are products that we use, and I don't mind telling you, we use some living turf products strategically once a month, in line with our granular fertilizers, which we get from GTS, and and we utilize some that on our cricket pitches, and we try to manage a healthy turf that can withstand the rigors of cricket and stick to the philosophies that we believe in.
So what specifically is getting? I wanted to point to this, because you're saying, if you can see my little cursor on here,
yep.
There's and I'll try and describe this for the people listening. We've got think of a 30-meter long baking tray equivalent,
Yep.
with you're saying there's 50 millimeters, so 5 centimeters of soil on top. Is that right?
Yeah, right where you are. Yep.
Yeah, where my thing is, and then it's 150 mil, so 15 centimeters of metal, right?
Yeah, and
Is
clay.
that So
Clay is inside that tray wall there.
these roots are roughly 20 centimeters then, because it's roughly the same length as that. But there's one here. Look how
So
big
you're
that big boy is.
yeah, so that's potentially pushing down half a meter.
Half a meter. So for those listening who haven't been able to hear this, essentially what we're saying is that these are not prime growing conditions, because you're compacting the heck out of this to get it to play well. And there is this correlation, which I always talk about with my clients, where I'm like, you need to aerate, because the softer the soil is, the easier the roots will grow. And you're growing massively deep roots in really compacted situation. So as somebody who's trying to do that, so like we talked about foot compaction, I've talked about this before. I do work at a private school, and there's a kindy area that's 100 square meters at most, and they section it off, and the kindy kids play on it all the time, and it shocks me how much compaction their little feet cause, right? And I want to try and grow. Essentially, I'm trying to do the same thing you want with AFL players and having it all hold together well, because I keep getting these bits where the kids just ruin it. And the normal stuff I'm doing is not working. So what are you doing that's getting such deep root growth from a very adverse condition? Like, is it a lot of biostimulants? Is it a lot of wetting agents? Is there certain types of fertilizers? Do you pray? Do you have a deal with the devil? How much did you sell your soul for? All that sort of stuff.
We put, there's no wetting agents. We don't put any wetting agents on our clays. And I'm remember I learned from Les, who's less is best mentality when it comes to clays.
Right.
Clay very slow leaching, so be careful what you put on them, because it's going to take a while for them to leach out. Wetting agents, no, we don't put any on there. We trialled around with it to try and get moisture down deep for about 2 applications, and our philosophy is no to wetting agents. What we try to do is, with these ones, we tried to aerate and tried to open them up so we could get water going down deeper. But we've had a lot of hit and miss with our aeration on trays. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, it's I was going to say catastrophic, so I'm probably exaggerating a bit, but it's not great. But we try to get it as good as we. The theory behind it is trying to provide channels for water to get down deeper into the profile. And opening it up. What we do is focus on using products that stimulate root growth. So the biostimulants, UK, a little bit of P, and just promoting the microbial side as well. And the products we use, we feel, I'm not saying it has to be Living Turf, but the products that we've used through Living Turf have had a really positive effect on it for us. I'm sure you could get them from GTS or New Turf or the Florentine products, or
but definitely keep saying Leaving Turf is good, because I said before we recorded people, I said you can say whatever you want, but also because we're also sponsored by them, so you can keep saying
Yeah, well, like I said, the living turf products have played a crucial role, and we only use them on the drop-ins, and we're probably going to start using them elsewhere. But there's a range of products that we use from them with the mindset that we want to drive root structure, and because the root structure has to have a significant part. So roots play a role in the health of the turf, but they play a role in drying out the pitch from deep down. And if you dry out the pitch from deep down, it assists with your with the pace, bounce, compaction, and everything else. So it plays a critical role. And for us, if we see the roots coming down through that tray, it has to be positive. Has to be a positive outcome for the turf, and for the turf manager, curator, has to work. So we're super excited. Well, the other ones that we did, we took 2 down to Carron Roll and Oval because we're now helping Saka, down there with their early season games. Saka have invested, the Cricket Association has invested time and money into drop-in pitches. So 2 of our pitches are now living down there, and we're building 2 more. And when we pulled them up, that were only put down in start of March, the root structure in them in the cooler months, when we pulled it up, we've never seen anything like it. So the combination of the liquids we put out, which is your biostimulants, your aminos, your kelps, the nutrient side of things, the micronutrients and macros. So just trying to promote root growth. It's working.
Yeah. Well, it could, because I've just bought some products that one of the things that I've got a challenge with is when I've been in the past too keen and used granule fertilizers. I'm just talking about my own world now. You're a involuntary consultant right now, if you didn't realize. But we've been, it's easy to put down any sort of granule fertilizer, just a simple agricultural chemical, all the way to the highest tech thing you've ever seen in your life. And you want that green up, so you blast it with some green up. But, I find that those turfs end up becoming very fickle. And last year in summer, we had in a total from not just in summer, but the couple of weeks before and after, we only had 1.6 mil of rain. Yeah. Right. It was like November 20 through till March the 6th or something like that. We basically had 0 rain. Usually we get a little bit more, and often we'll get like a summer storm where we'll get a big hit of it, and it's a huge relief. And so, you can get the top growth, but then it keeps getting cooked, and we needed regrowth, And so this year I'm trying to experiment with that sort of stuff. And I just had this interesting experience because the last person I had on the podcast, my last guest was a guy named Vasily, who is, his philosophy is use as little fertilizer as possible. He doesn't want to use it at all, and he's not a turf guy. He's a like a edible garden guy, completely different philosophy. And I like having these different thoughts on him. And he said that one of the things was that some of the seaweed companies add the smell and they add the color and they water it down. And so, anyways, I bought some MP Kelp Plus from Living Turf to just give it a try, and it's got some things that are different about it. Surely open it up, no seaweed smell. It smells like vinegar or a little bit of soy sauce or something, it doesn't smell like it at all. And I've only done one application. I've got no idea how it works. It literally is like, this is what happened this week to me, So, but that stuff, it fascinates me, and I feel like I've got it fairly dialed in on terms of just the color, but what's going on in the ground. And the other thing I'll just say, what's really impressive is you'll get people who will take a plug and they'll get their roots out, and then the sand will crumble off the bottom, and they'll be like, look how deep my roots are. You've ripped the roots out. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's, and I don't want to disparage anybody who's got great roots, like, fantastic. But there's a level to this as well where you're ripping your roots out and actually getting tension on it, and it still holds. They're strong. That's it's a great achievement.
We were rapt, so we were really impressed, and it just reinforced the decisions that we made and the direction that we have gone down. We don't make massive changes because hopefully we're on a good thing, but we're just doing little things often to try and just improve and grow. And we don't do them willy-nilly. We just do little bits, and we'll do them regularly and see where they go. So we sort of look at that, and it just reinforces that our decisions are right. Right now, in the current, in the now, we're saying that's a win. That's a win for us. It's worked well. We don't put a lot of granulars out. maybe one at the start of the cricket season in spring to
Right.
get going, one around Test match, which will our Test match is later this year, but it's more cosmetics to
Yep.
try and
Yeah.
bring it all up and have it consistent. And one after we give them our renovation, and that's about it. We're not putting things out every 4 to 6 weeks because our clays are naturally high in nutrients anyway. A lot of our Athelson soil came out of a market garden, and it's a lot higher in nutrients, so it can respond quite well. So we don't need to. So we just sort of working on things, looking at things, observing. Gets back to that measuring, monitoring, understanding what you're doing, and adjust, but don't adjust. Don't just change mid tack. We need to take our time and make sure what we're doing has some process and some thoughts behind it.
Well, look, mate, I've really enjoyed this. 2.5 hours almost. That's, I mean, was I boring you? Because
Yeah.
I was engaged. I can say from my half of it. And I mean, the one thing that do you know what? There was one thing I didn't ask you. It was the stupidest thing, which is why I didn't ask you. But I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you ever reckon that if you got that radiation machine and you accidentally zapped an ant that was running underneath it as you were testing the soil, that you might create a monster or something? Or is that just the Simpsons playing in my head? As you were saying that, I was like, oh, hold on a second.
I reckon we would have killed it. I reckon we would have nuked it. So, to be honest, we turn it on, you hit a button, and we walk away. We actually wear a badge, like, to measure our radiation exposure. So, just...
Oh, wow. So it is real serious levels, not comical.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we have signs that go out there. Nobody can go near it. We walk away. It beeps. We come back. We shut the trap door. We take our reading, and away we go. There's not many people of us that actually use it. Pagey now uses it in at the MCG. He got interested around the time of drop-ins. He built those drop-ins over at Optus. So he got involved, and I went over there and we sort of worked through it. So he's got on board, but again, it's each to their own. You're not pushing it down anyone's throat. We like it. It helps me sleep at night during preparation, and it helps us reflect back on the pitch we're on now. We're playing you WA boys, so I haven't seen the score. The game's finished here now, but they were 8 for 220, so I don't know what it is now.
I'll Google it while you're talking.
So they were 8 for 220.
All out for 240. South Australia. I was going to say South Adelaide. South Australia, 27 for 0. So,
nice.
So
we go, okay, well that's a good contest between bat and ball. It's what we want. But the pitch is a little bit drier, so we wouldn't, it's dry looking at it, but our testing has given us an idea how much drier it is compared to the last pitch. And we're still happy with it and everything. There's not just the moisture and the hardness or the bulk density that plays a factor. It's a mat of grass, and there's so many other things that play the factor, and the weather, what's going on. And so we sort of will take that in, see how it goes over the next 4 days, ask for feedback. I'm not talking to anyone that got a duck, and I'm not talking to anyone that got fifer, because if I want to feel good about myself, I'll go and talk to the guy that took 5 or the guy that got 100, but I'll go and talk to the right people that I know I'll get the right feedback from. So, Jason Gillespie's really, really good at that. A lot of the South Australian ones are so down to earth. They'll give you that feedback, even if they made 100. If it's too flat, they'll tell you. But the keepers are really good. And WA boys are the same. They're pretty well down to earth, and they'll give you honest feedback. So you go and talk to them. So, it's good.
Well, mate, thank you so much for coming on. And do you know what? I hope that this is a really good resource for anybody who loves this industry and wants to get into it. And the next superstar in coming up in that niche of the industry finds it helpful.
We're always looking for the next head curator, aren't we? So always happy to talk and sell the industry to whoever wants to listen to it. So pretty passionate about it. Love what I do. I reckon it's a pretty cool industry if you love sport and you love turf. It's not a bad place to work, and whether it's here or one of the other major venues or a golf course or something, it's pretty good. And it's just a good vibe amongst your team. They're like your second family. So yeah, pretty fortunate, I reckon, what I do.
Awesome. Thanks so much, mate.
Thanks, Luke. Cheers, buddy.